F11.
And loud is F12.
I see.
Is Evelyn on a Mac?
What?
So,
Is Evelyn on a Mac?
She's on a Mac,
you're
yes.
muted now.
So frustrating, and especially if, you don't really know what you're doing, and I don't know half the time myself.
Well, I need to get moving here.
Have to get started. Okay.
Evelyn, we'll keep you in tune. If you can hear us, fine. If not, then wave your hands.
She doesn't hear us. She just said that she waved her head though that she couldn't. Okay.
All right. First of all, I want to welcome Richard. Richard is new to our Torah study, and welcome, Richard. Good to see you. You want to tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, what you did in life?
Okay, well, I've been here since July 29th. My daughter moved here in June. She spent her whole life and her family in Illinois, in Springfield, Illinois. And I
Okay,
spent 46 of my 81 years in Springfield, and basically my whole life until July in Illinois. And I was a university-based surgeon at Southern Illinois University School of Medicine. Retired actually at 79, and decided, it's time to do something differently, moving where my daughter is. My son in Chicago, actually, his wife and Allison were vying for getting me up in Chicago. She was sending me all sorts of condos. I said, do I really want to live in Chicago again? I did that for 31 years. No, thanks.
I can't blame you. I can't blame you.
Doing something different, and here I am. And I came a few months ago, and like Temple Beth Shalom, it's interesting. The temple I belong to in Springfield is Temple Beth. It's Temple Birth Shalom. So sometimes they interchange the names, and I still go there online occasionally. Their services start at 4:00 our time here, 6:00 their time, lasts an hour.
Wow.
They do tour readings on Saturday. They actually have, we used to be conservative, became non-denominational, but they do Torah services for the conservative and people who are more Orthodox on Saturdays, and Fridays is just a regular service with a commentary sermon by the rabbi.
Very nice, very nice. Well, everyone welcome Richard, and
Welcome.
Hi, Richard. I missed where you're at right now. Where is that?
I live in Westbrook Village in Peoria, Arizona.
okay. West
North, I
Where is
live
that,
like
Claudio?
I just don't seem to be able to
I
unmute.
will go out again and come in.
Yeah, I've been trying all sorts of stuff and nothing is working.
We
Okay.
Suggested
Where is
Well,
that body
and
of
other people
water?
that you up your volume on your computer.
That's the problem. I simply
All right,
cannot get,
upper line of your keyboard. It says F12, and there's a little microphone looking thing there. Not microphone, but
Well, somebody calling her on her cell
phone
phone.
shaped thing, like try hitting the F12.
It's on the
It's
right
on the right side.
on the right side.
keyboard.
Keyboard.
On the right side, right side.
Oh. Well, the volume is all the way up.
Oh, okay, all right.
The
So
vol-
that's not the problem. So
No,
I don't know what it is. I
Well,
would go at.
what had
back to-
happened was that Zoom just came in and said, we are updating you, and then that was it.
Screwed up your app, okay.
Uh,
Well, the only thing I can see is just to go out.
Well, I'll do that, but I have closed captioning on as a help.
That's what I was gonna tell her to do. The second thing, she could, post captioning is working.
All right.
Okay, let us begin with the the blessing before Torah study, if we can.
Yeah. Oh,
Um,
yeah, now I can hear you. Okay.
Good. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav, Vishivanu Vazo Shri Torah. Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, ruler of the world, who sanctified us with your commandments, commanded us to engage in the words of Torah. Amen.
I think
Okay,
I'm sorry about that distraction, and I think she's good now.
I think I can hear you now.
can you hear
Yeah.
us? Good, good, good. Okay, your assignment, I don't know if everyone got it from Charlotte in an email, I think it was like on Monday, requesting that you express some of your miracles and or magic experiences in your lives. And I'm just going to go around to each individual. If you want to start with Marcia first, if you can, I'll let you start. And then, it doesn't have to be anything David Copperfield or anything like that. So,
Sometimes I felt like I am a little bit psychic, I don't know, not usually, but I remember coming back from New York City to Massachusetts, and we had gone into the city, New York, because my mother-in-law was quite sick, and we were driving in the car, and I said to my husband, something's not right. There's somebody, and I thought it was my mother-in-law, and there was I just didn't know what was happening. I was so concerned. And when we got home, I did find out, I think it was my mother who was ill. You make a connection, and so many times I've called up somebody in my family and they said, I was just going to the phone to pick it up to call you. You do have some kind of mental connection with people, I think you do.
okay. Any other magic or miracles in your life?
Yes, I have a comparable experience.
Go ahead.
The kids were young. The first house we had was on the market for sale, and the real estate agent called me and asked me if he could bring a client over at that moment. Well, the kids are busy watching TV, and as this man was speaking, I suddenly had a tremendous full image of what his face was. It was the most astonishing thing. This has never happened to me before. And as I'm speaking to him, the image of this man, I was able to visualize what he looked like. 10 minutes later, he came with his client, and when he walked in the door, I nearly fainted. This was exactly the image that I had in my mind as I was speaking to him.
Interesting.
It was, go figure, I never had another experience like that ever again. But I do have to agree with Marcia. Sometimes I think there is mental telepathy or something, but why it would happen with a complete stranger that I never saw before or again, go figure. It was a strange phenomenon, let's put it that way. Inexplicable. And
Okay.
yeah.
Bernie? No miracles or magic in your life, huh?
Reva's got one.
Okay, Reva, go ahead.
I have a couple, but I want to start off with a quote that I just love. And that is, there are two ways to live your life. One is though nothing is a miracle. The other is as though everything is a miracle. And the author is Albert Einstein.
Ah,
I have two, and it's hard to select. I was a Peace Corps volunteer in Paraguay a long time ago. And I was at a very rural, very impoverished medical center. And we didn't have an incubator. We were sometimes able to borrow one from a military facility, but they would take it back whenever they needed it. So most of the time, our hospital didn't have an incubator. With great effort, I was able to get an organization called Direct Relief to offer to send an incubator to our health center. But we were going to have to go through the port of entry in the capital, and and the country was a military dictatorship, and with a large air force that basically ran the country through marketing contraband or moving contraband around. So I knew if the incubator had to go through the port, it would be disappear. And after visiting the American ambassador and trying to get him to assist in getting the incubator into the country and into our site, I went and visited a friend who was also a Peace Corps volunteer, who was visiting her uncle. And I began to complain a great deal about the ambassador was so uncooperative and so unhelpful in trying to get this incubator, very badly needed incubator, to this country. And while I was talking to my friend, her uncle and aunt were also visiting with her. And eventually the uncle, who was kind of sitting on the periphery, said, maybe I can help you. And it turned out the uncle who was the uncle of another Peace Corps volunteer was the highest ranking American military person there. He was with the Air Force. And he was able to get the incubator to our site directly, bringing it in through an American flight, which was a training flight for the Air Force. So that's how they did that. And then it came in through the diplomatic pouch. And so we unloaded the incubator, put it on an ox cart, brought it to our hospital, and it's been used there for many years.
That was a miracle.
Miracle, yeah.
And,
Okay.
and when I went back to visit 16 years later, the first thing I was told was, we're still using the incubator.
Ah, wow.
The right place in the right time.
Exactly, exactly.
Just
Minya,
extraordinary series of coincidences that connected
Yeah,
me to direct
yeah.
relief. And then to the one person on the
Sorry.
globe who could get it from Santa Barbara, California to Concepcion, Paraguay.
wow.
Mm.
Minya. you're
My
next.
husband, my husband and I took a trip in 2013 to Europe with a group of teachers from New Jersey. We were there to do a camp and city tour, and the first stop was Berlin. And on our ride from the airport, and I heard, and I'm sure you all know what it is, because I can't make it sound like that, the sirens that you would hear. And I immediately thought the Nazis are coming. That was my
Yeah.
reaction. And we get to the hotel, and it's a lovely hotel, and we're walking in, and I said, Larry, I don't know if I could do this. If everything's going to give me a reaction to what was, like the siren did, I'm not going to be able to stay here. So we're looking around the room, and there's a mini bar. And we decided we would look and see what was in the mini bar, because you do that when you get to a hotel. We opened the door, it was packed, absolutely packed with stuff. And a little bottle of Johnny Walker Red fell out of this packed refrigerator. Johnny Walker Red was my father's favorite drink of choice.
Mm.
So I felt, okay, Teddy's here telling me that it's okay, so I'll be able to go on with this trip. That was my mystical reaction from my father.
Okay. Very nice, very nice. Donna,
This happened several years ago when my brother and I were taking turns going to where my parents lived out on their family farm to take care of my parents. They couldn't be by themselves at the time. And I've never seen this before. I haven't seen it after. And when it was through, I sat down and said, did this really happen? My mother wasn't supposed to get out of bed by herself. And I kept the potty chair at night beside her bed so that I could just run in. She was supposed to ring the bell, and she understood that. I'd say, Mom, now ring the bell if you have to get out of bed. Okay, well, of course, she didn't ring the bell, and she'd get out of bed and she would fall. And so the first time she fell, and there she was laying on the floor. Now, she was not a big woman. She was a small woman, but still she was dead weight as far as I was concerned. So and she was awake. She was laying there smiling up at me. I say to Mom, put your hands down and see if you can help me push you up. I'll put my hands under your back. And I thought if I could get her to a seating position, maybe I can get her back into bed. So I said, do you understand me, Mom? She'd say yes. I said, okay, put your hands down. And of course, she didn't put her hands down. So I put my hands under her back, the upper back and the lower back. And I said, okay, Mom, now push down with your hands. Of course, she didn't push down. But when I put my hands under her back, she floated to the top and onto the bed. And I just stood there in total amazement and looked at her laying in this bed. And I sat down and I said, God, of course, I had asked God before that. I said, God, help me do whatever I have to do to get her into bed. And so he did. And I sat back and I thought, I said, God, I don't believe this. And I still have a hard time believing that she got up from the floor and into the bed.
Wow. What an experience for sure.
It was.
Huh.
And then I put a chair up beside her bed and moved the potty chair.
Well, see, we learned a lesson from that too, didn't we?
Absolutely.
Okay, Shirley.
Yeah, several years ago. I'm gonna have to leave out a lot of details, so it may be just very spotty, but anyway, I was not feeling well and I came home from where I was, and I always have my phone charged on my way home because so that it'll be full. And guess I forgot to do it that night. Anyway, I got home and I walked into the bathroom to change clothes, and there was evidently a rotten piece of wood, and I fell through the floor.
Oh my God.
So I was standing up because I am on cross face. So I've got about 2 feet of space. I didn't get hurt, but I couldn't get myself up out of that hole. I finally managed to get my bottom up onto some solid wood, but I couldn't stand up. And to this day, I can't stand up if I'm fall down or go down. Anyway, I tried to call my neighbor next door, but I got a recording twice, and by that time I had no more charge on my phone. I laid on the floor for 5 days.
5 days?
5 days, from Monday to Friday,
Oh,
until
Mom.
a friend of mine at Temple said, you know, something's wrong. Shirley was supposed to help me set up for this meeting, a dinner we were having the next night, and she didn't show up. And she said, that's not like her. And so she sent the janitor over to my house, and he called her and he said, I'm knocking on the door and her car is here, but I don't get an answer. She said, call 911. So they did, and they found me. I never could, those 5 days I was trying to get into my bedroom where my charger was for my phone, and I never made it. It was like 5 feet. To this day, I don't know why. But anyway, when they found me, I was in the fetal position in a corner of my bedroom door that I couldn't get through the door, and I don't know why. But anyway, they took me to the hospital, and the doctor didn't know why I was there, other than they called in a cardiologist and he wanted to put in a pacemaker. And I said, no. He said, ma'am, you don't realize you have a very bad heart condition. When was the last time you went to a cardiologist? And I said, I've never been to one. He said, with a heart condition like that, you've never been to a cardiologist? I said, no, do you know why I'm here? And I told him why. And he said, okay, let's see what we can do. I said, why don't you just let's go till tomorrow. It turned out my heart was so dehydrated that it wasn't going to go very much longer. Later he told me that if another hour had gone past, my heart would have stopped beating, because it was so dehydrated. It wasn't going to work any longer. And when I went the next week, I had to go to his office for an EKG, and of course my heart was perfect. And he said to me, you've got somebody looking after you, don't you? And I said, yeah, I think I've got several people. He said, no, I'm not talking about a person. He said, there's somebody up above that watched over you. He said, when I saw you in that bed the day I came in, I knew the next day when I came in, you were going to be gone. You were going to be dead. He said, I did not expect you to live through the night.
That's
So I guess God was watching over me.
Yes, yes.
Amen.
yes, ma'am.
Amen.
Yeah.
Richard,
Okay, well, mine is what I would call the light bulb miracle, which happened twice to me, and I'll only give you one. I was a student at Loyola University in Chicago. I went to a Catholic, good Jewish boy, went to Catholic school in Chicago. Someday I could tell you why. It was an interesting experience, but I was in a philosophy course. And he didn't give any term papers or any tests until the very end. You had to turn in a term paper, and mine was on Benedict de Spinoza. And you had to, and we had to take a test. Well, I didn't understand that goddamn thing he was saying, you know? And then the very last day of class, I went to class, sat down, and he talked point by point of what he said the whole year, semester. And you know how a light bulb goes on your head? All of a sudden, this bright incandescent light bulb went onto my head. I said, oh, that's what he's talking about. And a few days later, we had the test, and there were written tests. We had a little test book, and I got an A on that test and an A on my Spinoza a term paper to hate the course. I probably would have flunked the course because I honestly didn't understand what he was talking about. So if that's a miracle, that's a miracle. I only had it one more time as a doctor.
oh my, oh my. Evelyn, do you have an experience?
I already told you, Mom.
Already been. Si?
My miracle was that after 4 years in the service, I was able to come home.
Ah,
Really?
okay,
Wow.
okay.
So you were being watched over.
Yes, yes, yes. I have two such miracles or magic, whatever you want to call it. One was the adoption of my daughter. We got called the day before stating that we didn't know the sex yet, that a child would be available tomorrow. And they asked us if we wanted it or not. And I said, I need more information. And they said, we can't give you any more information until we know more information. So we decided to take it, and we went to the attorney's office, and there was this little girl, boneheaded, and looking right at us, and there was a little smile on her face, and right then and there, I knew that this was the miracle that was promised to us. The second one was when I was in the Army. I was a cook, and we were in a field kitchen tent. And we were making fried chicken and all the fixings with the gravy. And I was carrying a big old pot of gravy to the serving line, and I fell with this pot in my hand, and the pot hit the edge of the table and came back on me. This is hot, greasy gravy. And if it hadn't have been for some instinct from the guys around me, they poured a big old, I would call 5 or 6 gallon container of iced tea and poured it on me. If they had not done that, I would have been scarred for life. So I call that the miracle of my life.
Yeah.
Right.
Amen.
And I've been very, very fortunate in that respect. But
Amen.
anyway, thank you all for your stories. I appreciate that. The Torah's word for miracle, nes, N-E-S, means something like a banner or a sign. I think that is very, very true. How do we explain miracles? Are they explainable?
No.
What do you think? Anyone?
Just have to believe.
You have to believe? Okay,
I
so
think most miracles are explainable. You know, and in fact, when you read our little thing here about miracles, you know, you realize that a lot of miracles are explainable. Yeah, sometimes you can't explain it, but most of the time you can. They even try and explain, for instance, the miracle of the water separating as a wind that opened up, you know? So I think modern times people are saying most miracles can be explained. Even the flying saucers can be explained.
Okay, but also, isn't it true? Go ahead, Si.
No, I was gonna say that if you believe in the concept of God, are you believing in a miracle to start with? And if you do, then it's easy to believe in the miracles.
Okay, so it's also, someone stated that if it was God willed it as the sun. What does that mean? What does God willed it mean? Anyone? Minya,
I think one of the commentators that we read said that he believed that everything was preordained,
Yeah,
that some of the miracles were already planned in God's plan for the world and for human beings. And that's why those things happened. They were meant to happen.
okay, Marcia?
I think some of the miracles in the Bible are things that happened in nature, and the story was written around what happened. It was like, how do I explain? Let's go back to, it's in this reading this week, and it was in the Korah story last week, where the earth opens up and swallows these people. So obviously there was some kind of fissure in the earth, and maybe that did happen. And then, so now we have a story written around the earth opening up, you know? So
Yeah.
I think sometimes it's a backwards explanation of what happened in nature. The
Yeah.
the Noah story. It's well known that almost every religion has a flood story in there somewhere. And they all have their own explanation of the flood story. And in the Jewish explanation is God clearing the earth of all the bad people and saving Noah and his family and the animals. So I think sometimes it's a backwards explanation.
yeah, yeah.
Evelyn and then Riva.
Apropos of that, I think I'd mentioned this some time ago, that there was an article printed about Sodom and Gomorrah, and it has been speculated that it was an asteroid, that it may have been a small one, but certainly destructive enough, and certainly created havoc to those particular communities. And possibly they were very undesirable communities, and just happened an asteroid hit them and destroyed them. And so the tales afterward would say God punished them because they were evil and were not following his edicts. And yet it was perhaps a force of nature that did it. Now, you can also say, well, God sent the asteroid to destroy them. So it depends upon whether you're looking at it from a religious standpoint or a natural phenomenon that people created, as Marcia said, people created the story after the happening. And so for their own purposes, whatever it was.
Okay, Riva?
Yeah, I agree with Einstein. You know, I believe miracles are all around us. And and the example I love most, I guess, is the birth and death of people. You know, those of us who've had children ourselves, or fathered children or adopted children, however children came into our lives, I just find them miraculous. And all of us, I think, have experienced the death of loved ones. We don't know really how people arrive into our lives and how they go away, and I think there's something so unknowable and so profound about the arrival of newborns and the death of people that we know, that for me, it's utterly unknowable, but I still feel it's enormously profound. And I see those as miracles, not the big flashy kind of ones, that we may have had, but the more mundane ones, that are around us all of the time. Sometimes we'll see something in nature, and a bird or a butterfly or a bug or whatever is so extraordinary and magnificent looking that I find that very deeply meaningful. And I don't need to know exactly who sent it or how it got here. I just know that those things are real, that we are surrounded by magnificent things that are not totally understandable.
So
Evelyn?
from that standpoint, you might as well go back to the fact that the earth was created. It had minerals on it. Eventually, something happened. And was it God that did take these inanimate minerals and make them animate? In other words, was it God who created life? Was it a force of nature that did? But you're going from something that is not alive to something that is living. And then that living creation wants to continue living. And so somehow or other, it learns to reproduce itself in whatever environment there is in order for it to be able to continue living as such. To me, this was the basic miracle of all existence. The fact that life was created from inanimate, not living things, and formed in such a way that you suddenly had life on the earth. And this is what everyone is wondering about on other planets, other moons, elsewhere in the universe. They're looking for the tools of creation, and will there be life as a result of what exists there? To me, this is the most amazing miracle of all.
Okay. Cy, and then Donna.
As for Evelyn, if we believe in God, if we believe in a God, why is it difficult to believe in anything else? I mean, think about this now. We decided to believe in God. Well, we don't know anything about that, but we're against the earth swallowing up people or a flood or anything else. That we're a little skeptical about. But why should we be more skeptical about that as compared to the belief in God?
Anyone have an answer to that before Donna?
Yeah, I agree with you, Cy. People say a force of nature. What is the force of nature? It is God. And God controls the miracles that happen. I believe he parted the Red Sea. Some people say a big wind came. Well, maybe a big wind came, but who sent the big wind? If you talk back to it, it goes back to, what is this? This is from God, God Almighty.
Okay, let us begin with reading. It's on page 51. Magic and miracles in Jewish tradition. Who would like to read? Don't raise your hands at once. Riva, go ahead.
Okay, Perek Bet, Magic and Miracles in Jewish Tradition. After Korah, Dathan, Abiram, and their followers publicly questioned and criticized the leadership of Moses and Aaron, Moses challenges them to bring pans of fire and incense to the sanctuary. Moses commands the people to separate themselves from the rebels. He declares that God will make known who has the authority to lead the people by what happens in the morning. Moses says, "You will know that it was Adonai who sent me to do all these things." The next morning, the people assemble. According to the Torah, they watched as the earth miraculously opens, swallowing Korah, Dathan, Abiram, and their families, households, and possessions. All is lost inside the smoldering earth. Soon fire blazes forth, killing all 250 of Korah's followers. The entire community witnesses this gruesome scene. Later in our parsha, Moses commands each of the 12 tribal chieftains to bring a staff for deposit in the sanctuary. The next day, he discovers that Aaron's staff has miraculously sprouted, producing blossoms and almonds. Despite the wonder, however, the people of Israel continue to complain about their conditions. Miraculous events are reported in many different places within the Torah. 10 plagues are sent to punish the stubborn Pharaoh. The Red Sea parts before the fleeing Israelites and drowns the pursuing Egyptians. Manna is sent to feed the wandering Israelites on their journey through the desert. Water flows from a rock when Moses strikes it in the Parsha Balak. A donkey speaks to her master. How are we to understand such incidents that defy the known laws of nature? Are Jews expected to accept such wonders on faith? If one rejects an impossible or questions the reliability of such miracles, are the authority of Torah and its meaning diminished? If the Torah contains miracle stories like the earth opening and swallowing up Korah, Dathan, and Abiram, can we conclude that it is more a work of fiction than a profound religious truth?
Go ahead.
Did you want me to stop there?
Yeah, let's stop there. The question is it more of a work of fiction or is it of religious truth? Anyone have a response?
It all depends on your religious viewpoint.
All right.
Okay,
It's interesting, Rabbi Kaplan gave, and this is my first really introduction to the temple, in I think it was spring or fall, he gave a talk on the four gods. That was the talk, and I thought, oh, he's talking about the various religious, Mohammedanism, Judaism, Christianity, yeah, but that's not what he was talking about at all. I don't know who else was there. I don't think, I may have been the only one there, but he was talking about the four perceptions of God, and he got this from a book, and he took then, there was one where God, maybe you believe in it, but God doesn't intervene. Then there's one God who is I'm trying to remember the various, one God who is remote, but does miracles. Another God is there and is very vengeful. And then one God is very helpful and very benign and very loving. So you got these four gods, and it really depends on how your perception of God is, that is how I think people feel about miracles and about the Bible itself. I mean, if you're a very Orthodox Jew, you obviously feel the Bible was developed 5,700 years ago, and that's when life started. If you're a creationist, so it depends on your belief, and we're not going to change what people think.
Riva.
Yeah, twice in the last couple of years, the rabbi has offered a course on the four gods. And there is a book, I believe that's basically the name of it. And it was developed by, I forget what the academic institution was, but they did a survey of a variety of people of different religions about their perceptions of gods. And then they categorized them into four categories. And part of the message that came away from that class, and I believe it was a 5 or 6 week class each time it was taught, was that we have various perceptions. Not all of us see God, think of God or see God or experience God in the same way. But at least in our temple, we're very, very accepting of people's various views of that.
Okay. Anyone else?
Well,
Donna?
I believe that the Bible, the Tanakh, the Bible, the Holy Scriptures, whatever, that this is the Word of God. I don't think they're just stories that they're put there. I think they actually happened. And I think that that it was written by the hand of God. And as such, it's true. If I didn't believe that it was true, I don't think I would bother with it.
Okay. Let us continue. Reva, do you want to continue?
Sure, hang on a second. Okay. It should not surprise us that Torah interpreters have struggled with such questions for many centuries. Early rabbinic commentators accept the description of miracles within the Torah as a matter of faith. They take for granted that if the Torah reports them and they were witnessed by others, such incidents are credible. Yet how can events like manna falling from heaven, an animal speaking, a sea opening, the earth swallowing Dathan and Abiram possibly be rationalized within the scheme of the laws of nature? How can one account for such miracles? Facing that question, early Jewish interpreters suggest that such miracles were planned by God at the very creation of the heavens and earth. These events described in the Torah are not interruptions of natural law. Rather, they are programmed into creation to occur at precisely the historic moment when they are necessary. We can understand miracles, therefore, as a programmed natural event. However, the rabbinic acceptance of this theory about miracles is combined with blunt skepticism. Miracles cannot be cited as proof for any argument, say the rabbis. In danger, one must not rely on a miracle. Similarly, Yanai warns us that one should never depend on a miracle. Nachman ben Jacob teaches miracles occur, but food is rarely provided by them.
Okay, stop. Any comments in regard to this last paragraph? Minya?
You
I
know,
have I have a question about where it says that miracles occur as they are necessary. If you think back to events that we believe were influenced by God and his actions, then how do you explain that the Holocaust was necessary?
Yeah, I agree.
That's
Yeah.
always the question. That question always comes up.
Yep.
It's that bad things happening to good people thing.
I know, but it just, when I saw that it said, when they are necessary, it just made me wonder, like, of course, we knew that the Red Sea split because it was necessary. The Israelites had to get through. Same with other things. If you think of Noah's Ark, so all animals were saved by pairs. But in the case of the Holocaust, how could that have been necessary?
Or the Inquisition, for that matter.
Right, that's another one. For any genocides.
you know,
Or any needless suffering.
Any war. I mean,
Richard, you had your hand up?
well, there's a religion called Calvinism. I don't know if anybody's familiar with it. Actually, Calvinism believes in predetermination, that you are who you are and you're going to do something which is predetermined. So you might as well just do as much. Lincoln was very much, he was brought up in the Calvinist tradition. Whether he really believed it or not, I don't think so. But when you read his writings, that's a lot. And if we read this thing that says that all these miracles are predetermined, that's really predeterminism. There's nothing you can do to stop it or change it.
then why bother?
Yes,
Yeah.
why bother? Exactly.
But don't we also need to be aware of these incidences and learn from them?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. But but are they predetermined? That's the thing. And again, that's a philosophical determination. And I'm sure if we look at the Talmud, there's probably pages and pages and pages of different opinions. The old funny story of you put two Jews in a room and you get three opinions.
Exactly.
But
Marcia?
that precludes free will. that means that no matter what you choose to do, it was already decided that you were going to do it anyway. You know, if you know what I'm saying? I mean, whatever your choice in life is, it's been predetermined for you and you're not making that choice. I see Bernie's got his hand up.
Bernie, go ahead.
I got two issues going here. One is, I find that when people, the so-called sages explain things, they do it in one of two different ways. If it's convenient, they use predetermination. If it's not convenient, they use free will. The other thing that concerns me about this whole discussion is every religion's got its own God. And how do we have the chutzpah to say our God can beat up your God, basically? I mean, the Buddhists don't look at things the way we do, neither do the Hindus or you pick it. Why is our religion so much better, or why does our God do things the right way and their gods don't?
Anyone have a answer to that, Reva?
Yeah, I don't have an answer to that, but I just want to comment that within this class and within our religious community, there are very different points of view about how literally we take events in the Torah. And we have a lot of different opinions. Some of us believe some of what we're reading are fables. And sometimes fables, for example, have a deeper meaning than the literal truth when we hear it. So I think there's deep meaning whether you take some of this material literally or not.
Okay. Anyone else?
Yeah,
Evelyn, go ahead.
I think that people are born, their parents have a religion, and so the youngsters are raised that way. And yet we find as adults that sometimes that particular religion does not satisfy or answer our own emotional, philosophical, psychological needs. And so they will turn to another religion. And, you know, there are religions that each one has a unique aspect about it. And so for some people, when they convert to Judaism, there is something lacking in what they had in the other religion, whatever it was. And there were many Jews in the 60s and 70s who converted to Buddhism because they felt that Buddhism satisfied something that they felt they needed. And so, yes, these different religions exist. And who's to say that we are the most right or they are the most right? Let us say that for Jews, we feel for us, this is right. And so we continue to believe it, but others may not. The fact that religions fight with each other, well, that's a power play. That's each one wants to be the dominant force, physically, economically, politically. And so religious battles and political battles are really more in the same when you stop and think of the Medicis and the Middle Ages and so forth and so on. So to me, our religion obviously satisfies something within us. Otherwise, we would feel it did not. And the fact that we are quibbling about all of this is simply discussion as such, just as the rabbis discuss it and come up with their own viewpoints as such. And whoever happens to be dominant is the one that particular viewpoint is taken as gospel at that particular time.
Okay. Let's continue to read then. Reva, do you want to still read or do you want to turn it over?
I'm happy to pass it off to somebody else who'd like to read for a while.
Okay.
All
Anyone
right.
else?
I'll do
Evelyn,
it.
go ahead.
Okay. Philosopher and commentator Moses Maimonides actually bases his proof of God's governing power over all nature on the reality of miracles. Taking the Torah as a reliable source of information about the world, Maimonides argues, we might be asked, Why has God inspired a certain person and not another? Why has God revealed Torah to one people and not another? Why has God's power been revealed through one prophet and not another? We answer all such questions, explains Maimonides, by saying, that is God's will, that is God's wisdom. And we do not understand why God's will or wisdom determine any of these things. In essence, Maimonides contends that while the miracles reported in Torah raise questions, they also demonstrate God's mysterious and wonderful power over all nature. Nachmanides suggests that great miracles like the parting of the Red Sea teach human beings to appreciate the hidden miracles around them. He explains that everything that happens in our affairs, private or public, is miraculous. Life itself is a wonder-filled gift. 17th century Jewish philosopher and interpreter Baruch Spinoza offers a very different view on biblical miracles. Believing that nothing can violate the laws of nature, Spinoza rejects miracles as ignorant prejudices of an ancient people who believe that God intervenes in nature for their benefit. This accounts for the way in which stories like the punishment of Korah, Dathan, and Abiram are presented. They are distorted, says Spinoza, by the innocent but false assumptions and opinions of events that the early Hebrews could not understand or
Okay,
explain.
stop.
Yeah.
Comments regarding these last two paragraphs? Marcia,
That last sentence that Evelyn read, that's basically what I said. Something may have happened in nature that then was explained as a miracle and a story built around it,
mhm,
to explain what had happened so that,
Yeah.
or it was the religious leaders of the time, what if they were rabbis or whatever their position was, it was their way of teaching a lesson to the congregation. That this is going to happen. If you do this, then this will happen to you, or God will somehow punish you. So it was twofold, explain the story, explain the natural occurrence, and at the same time teach a moral lesson to the congregation around them.
Richard, you had your hand up.
It's interesting. Again, here we see the dichotomy of opinion. Moses Maimonides, who also, by the way, was persecuted, and today he's still considered very controversial figure in Jewish traditions. And Baruch Spinoza, who I wrote a thesis on, I told you about, he was a pantheist. He believed that God was sort of in everything, but that God didn't control anything. And he was excommunicated from the church and from the synagogue in Holland because they were afraid that the Christian authorities would then, persecute the Jews because of his beliefs, and he had to leave Holland because of that. So we can see the difference in how people think. Today we're not going to solve the issue. We're going to discuss it, and we're going to say, your opinion's yours, my opinion's mine. Let's live with each other nonetheless.
Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Evelyn.
I also think that because we are living in an era where knowledge has exploded exponentially, particularly scientific knowledge, and so we can find the laws of nature. We can pinpoint the various laws of nature or the laws that have been determined by scientists, whereas in those days, there was not such knowledge. And so people had no way of determining what would be the cause of some natural phenomenon occurring. I mean, people in Hawaii, it was a god who caused the Mount Pele, one of the volcanoes, to explode because the god was angry. This was the only way within the limitations of what they knew to explain the forces of nature around us. We have become so sophisticated in terms of knowledge that they seem unfortunately ignorant. 200-300 years from now, if we haven't destroyed ourselves with atomic bombs or something like that, again, knowledge will have advanced to such a degree that they will look back on us and say, we were just ignorant fools. We didn't know what the reality was. So we'll have to look at what was in the past. We tend to look at it, what happened in the past, on the basis of current values, current knowledge. And so it's very difficult for us to evaluate what they thought at that time because we weren't there and we think we know so much more. So it's whatever time you live in is the values that you tend to absorb, shall we say.
Okay, anyone else?
Interest- Yeah, interesting. Maimonides is still revered. And sometimes I'm not sure exactly why, but anyway, the great hospital in Haifa, Israel, is named Rambam after him. Yeah, and it's a great hospital. It's a hospital that is used during wartime for where they take the soldiers that have been wounded. They have built a basement, which is now used for parking underneath the hospital. That can be turned into, in just a very short period of time, to a hospital with all the equipment and everything that is needed.
Wow. Interesting.
Yeah, it is.
Okay. Evelyn, you want to continue?
Sure.
Bottom of
this is
the page.
The bottom, very last sentence on the back,
Yes.
on the page 52. Spinoza's rejection of miracles is disputed by modern philosopher and commentator Martin Buber. Buber or Buber, I'm not sure which. He writes that the concept of miracle described within the Torah can be defined at its starting point as an abiding astonishment. Such astonishment is a natural occurrence. Furthermore, says Buber, the great turning points in religious history are based on the fact that again and ever again, an individual and a group attached to that individual wonder and keep on wondering at a natural or historical event, at something that intervenes faithfully in the life of this individual and this group. The point of astonishment comes in the realization that one grasps the cause of the miraculous event and is permitted a glimpse of the sphere in which a soul power, not restricted by any other, is at work. Placed in the context of our Torah portion, the earth opening up to swallow Korah, Dathan, and Abiram is an astonishing miracle in which one sees the power of God at work. Experiencing the miracle, one knows the certainty of God's existence and power. The miracle is a window into God's presence. Belief in miracles. Every miracle can be explained after the event. Every miracle is possible, even the most absurd, even that as an axe floats. In fact, nothing is miraculous about a miracle, except that it comes when it does. The east wind has probably swept bare the fjord or the ford in the Red Sea hundreds of times and will do so again. But that it did this at the moment when the people in their distress set foot in the sea, that is the miracle. Franz Rosenzweig. Rabbi Mordechai M. Kaplan, the philosopher who inspired the creation of the 20th century American movement of Reconstruction Judaism, disagrees with Buber and also rejects most traditional explanations of Bible miracles. In our day, when humanity has achieved marvels of control over nature by a technology that assumes the uniformities of natural law, Belief in miracles that contravene natural law is a psychological impossibility for most people. Kaplan dismisses the arguments of those who point out that the miracles of the Torah did not occur privately, but were witnessed by many people. Today's science challenges the credibility of miracles, he writes, repudiating them as factually inaccurate. Kelly.
Any comments at this point? Reading? Okay, let's continue.
Well, I can only say, there we go, dichotomy of opinion. Three
Yes,
different Jews with three different opinions.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
maybe even more, yeah.
Yeah.
Pinkus Pelly does not argue for the credibility of miracles, but maintains that each one mentioned within the Torah contains an important lesson. Korah's spectacular downfall, for example, was to serve as a warning. It was meant to call our attention to the differences between authentic, responsible leadership and illusory, appealing rhetoric. The report of the miraculous process of growth of the blossoms and almonds on Aaron's staff was meant to teach us that true leadership is not necessarily demonstrated by the ability to produce immediate results with instant cures to all problems. Even the leader chosen by God in a miraculous act cannot skip the several stages in the growth of an almond. The orderly sequence must be followed. First sprouts, then blossoms, and only then the finished product. It is apparent that Jewish interpreters approach the subject of miracles from varying points of view. Some are skeptical, others find profound symbolic and spiritual meanings. Still others dismiss miracles as figments of primitive imagination, unworthy of contemporary consideration. Miracles, Nahama Leibowitz comments, cannot change human minds and hearts. They can always be explained away. Which
Okay,
is,
stop.
yeah.
Any comments in regards to these couple paragraphs? Are these go ahead, Marcia.
That last sentence, and they can always be explained away. And when you have a minor miracle in your own life, you can explain it away, but sometimes you don't want to explain it away, or it's something you need in your life, that miracle, it's something that you say, if not this, then what would have happened, or, isn't that amazing that this did happen at that moment, as we say, it's when it occurs. So sometimes you want that miracle, you, and I was a scientist. I mean, and I know Richard was a surgeon or a doctor. And so you come from more of a scientific mind, but I'm sure you've seen miracles in your medical career that you say, how did this happen? You can't always explain it, and sometimes why bother?
Anyone else? Sai?
I think the mere fact that we have so many different Jewish groups is an indication of how people feel toward the Bible. I mean, if you're Orthodox, then I'm sure everything's acceptable. But as you keep going to the right, or I'm sorry, to the left, things change, and you don't take what's written in the Bible to the same degree as if you were Orthodox. And that's a nice thing. And you're sharing your feelings with other people.
Well,
Evelyn?
every religion, I think of Christianity, where originally it solidified into Catholicism, but then because of human abuses, within the framework of that religion, you began to get splinter groups saying, this is not right, we should do things another way. And then when you had the Reformation and Protestantism, again, you had different groups breaking off. You had the Methodists, you had the Calvinists, you had the Huttites, and it became
The Lutherans.
each one chose something that they felt was either wrong, and they were going to make it right. And so, as many people as you have, you're going to have equally twice as many opinions, as it were. So I think it is within human nature to dispute, disagree, want something different, want something better. And so this is what human beings are. And so we have to accept that some are going to believe in miracles and some are going to say, no, there's a scientific explanation for it.
Rita,
Yeah, I think part of the value of the Torah is the discussion and the debates, the thinking processes that have evolved over time, ethical issues, all kinds of societal issues are addressed with lots and lots of different opinions. And I think part of the real value of studying Torah is recognizing, how our ancestors thought through many of these issues. And I think that has value whether or not we take some of these stories literally.
so let me ask this question. Was it necessary for God to punish Corin and his group in such a manner? Or could he have done it or he or she or it could have done it in a different way?
At
Go ahead.
the time, that was severe punishment was a way of making people stand up and pay attention. God said, I've said this, you do it, and don't argue with me. And if the people disagreed or didn't want to follow him, the only way that they could understand that he meant what he said was such severe punishment. Our outlook on law and justice today is somewhat different. And that's why I say it's very difficult for us to look back at when the Torah was formulated. And some of us agree with those values and some of us don't. And so I still say you always look at it within the context of the culture that you have been raised in. And so that's why you will get as many opinions as we get as such. And these commentators, Rambam and Pele and the others, they all lived at different times. And so their input was from the values that they saw at the time that they were living. And so it's interesting to read them. And yet at the same time, you have to look at it within that context as such.
Okay, Marcia?
Korah and the chieftains, Natan, Abiram, and whoever the other third party is, they were challenging Moses at the time. And Moses asked to meet with them and they would not come to meet with Moses. I'm just equating this in my mind to what's happening now with China. And China would not meet with their representatives, with Blinken at a previous convention of last week. Blinken went to China. Moses went to the encampment of those chieftains to talk to them because they would not come to him. So we have all these equating things happening through the centuries, and I'm seeing the same thing happens over and over again. This challenge to Moses was a tough one. I mean, these guys, Korah wanted to take over. He was challenging the Kohanim's authority in the sanctuary and Moses' authority with the people. And I guess what Evelyn was saying is God said, this is not going to go on and we're going to stop this right where it is right now because things are only going to get worse. So I know I'm rambling, but what I'm saying, I agree with Evelyn. It had to be stopped. And at that time, that was the way things were stopped. We
Okay.
just say, that's it, boom, you know.
Okay, Donna and then Minya.
Yeah, the question that you asked, could God have done it a different way? Absolutely. He was God. We have to accept he is God. And he could have done it, I don't know how many ways, but this is a way he chose to do it. And I agree with that, with Evelyn there, that yes, this was probably the reason why he did it. But yes, God can do anything, and sometimes we don't understand. If we understood everything about God or why he acted the way he acted in certain situations, we would be God then, because we would understand. We don't understand, and we have to accept sometimes the fact that we don't understand.
Okay, Minya, you had your hand up.
Yes. As far as God doing this, in my opinion, it's that he wanted to make it absolutely clear that when he says something, he stands by whatever it was. For example, in this case, he didn't just kill the 3 men, he killed their families, their neighbors, and everybody else went into the hole.
Mhm.
So I think it was a matter of really pointing out, this is my power and I can use it as I see fit. And if you challenge it, be aware that there are severe consequences.
Amen.
Anyone else? Okay, let us conclude with the last couple of paragraphs. It's on the bottom of page 53.
So
Yeah,
I had
right.
his hand up.
Go
So
ahead,
I
Richard,
and
I'm
Richard had
sorry.
their hands up.
Richard, go ahead.
You want me to continue? Steve,
Uh,
you want me to continue?
Yes, please.
There can be no doubt, however, that the Torah's miracle stories are intriguing. The mystery they embody seems to attract our attention and underscore their importance. We read them with fascination, wondering about their meaning and sensing that they contain secrets we should try to fathom. It is, after all, nearly always the extraordinary, not the ordinary, that captures our attention, challenging us to unravel its hidden, elusive code and message. Could this explain the miracles mentioned in the Torah? Are they meant as powerful invitations, bait for tempting, bending, and stretching the human mind, imagination, and heart into new realms of reasoning and faith?
Okay. Marcia.
You know, that was a really interesting paragraph, because when I listened to it, what if the Torah had been written as just a, you know, explaining this trip across the desert, blah, 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 blah. Now you throw in these miracles and these fascinating things that are happening to people, and we sit up and pay attention. And we listen to the stories, try to make sense out of them, try to put meaning into them. So I think it had to be that these miracles had to be put into the story for us to accept the Torah. Well, not to accept, but to give meaning to the Torah, if nothing else. Okay.
Okay. Sai.
I think that the big job that the authors of the Torah had was to convince the people that there was a God. This was their job. And up to that point, there was really no belief in God. And so by showing what this so-called God could do, they would hope that the people would have a greater belief in God. And this goes on through the whole Bible. He's doing things, all these miracles, we call miracles, but I think it's a little advertisement for the people that there is such a thing as a God.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, there are two basic reasons that God performs miracles. One is to strengthen faith and to accomplish good, and the other is to teach a spiritual principle. these are things that we've all discussed today. And honestly, there may be ways to explain miracles, maybe there are not. But I think it's all a matter of faith. And when we have faith and understand that these miracles or the magic of miracles are created in, like was mentioned earlier, what was God's will at the time for a specific purpose. Any comments?
Mm.
I got everyone silenced. Great discussion, everyone. I know we're a little bit early, unless anyone has something else to say. Let us conclude then with the final, with the blessing.
I guess we have to look for the miracles.
Yeah.
Good point. Okay, let us begin together. Baruch atah
Right.
Eloheinu melech haolam, asher
Asher natan Torah
emet, Chayei olam nata b'tokenu,
Baruch
Baruch atah Adonai,
no
Noten Torah.
Uh,
Blessed is Adonai our God, ruler of the universe,
It's given
who
us
has given us a teaching of truth, implanting within us eternal life.
blessed.
Blessed is Adonai, giver of the Torah. Amen. Okay, everyone have a good rest of the week. And we'll see you either Friday night or
next Wednesday.
next week.
Next week.
And Evelyn is in charge of next week.
Yeah, the red heifer.
Okay.
It's very interesting. There are other ramifications other than the ritual of the red heifer. There were political ramifications and there were philosophical ones as such. And so it's actually a lot more than what is presented there. So it'll be
Okay.
interesting. It'll be
Very
interesting.
good. Looking forward to it.
Okay.
Okay, everyone, have a great rest of the week. Bye.
Right. Bye-bye.